Hi everyone, my name is Byrne, and for this video we are going to be discussing an interview that I had with Patrick Heffern, who is a deployment manager at Mars Chocolate. So a little bit about Mr. Heffern's backstory is, as stated before, he is the current deployment manager at Mars Chocolate. Back in 1976, he decided to major in computer science. He said at the time he wasn't really sure what a computer even was. But then once he started working, he was supporting and implementing software packages. So some of the software that he worked with was MSA, M&D, and now currently SAP at Mars Chocolate. So a little background about the company Mars that Pat works for is that they are a leading manufacturer of chocolate, chewing gum, mints, and sweets. A few brands that you guys have probably seen before are Twix, Snickers, M&M's, Skittles, and Orbit. And they pretty recently merged with Wrigley, which has a whole different operating software. So the main focus in the IT world at Mars has been integrating these two application softwares together. It's a multi-million-dollar project that has taken a few years, but we will go into more detail on that later. Now that you know a little bit about Pat and the company that he works for, we can dive right into the interview questions. So the first question that I was really excited to ask Pat was, what does your daily schedule look like? I think as a computer science student, it's really important to understand the day-to-day life of an IT professional, so I was really excited for his response on this one. And he started off by saying that the Friday before a week starts, he establishes goals for the coming week. That way he knows exactly what he's doing day to day, and it's all listed out right in front of him. He said when he's at his best, he also keeps a list of his top priorities on a sticky note, either real or electronic, on his desktop, and that stays in his sight for the majority of the day, so he knows exactly what his objective is for the day. He also mentioned that he hosts a lot of meetings. He said that it's always very important to be prepared for these meetings, so a lot of times there is a PowerPoint prepared so people are engaged by hearing and seeing, but he also said it was important to use OneNote to take notes and to identify any follow-up actions. Pat also had a funny little saying about management and how it's kind of like herding cats. His job is to make sure that people are getting things done, that their tasks are being completed, that he's getting updates, and that there's no obstacles preventing people from getting their work done. And that's a lot like herding cats. My next question for Pat was, what was the biggest challenge that you faced in your career? And he told me that transitioning into management was hard for him because he is a more task-oriented person rather than people-oriented. But one of the biggest lessons he learned from this was that relationships are key. And the best time in his career was when he had very strong relationships with the folks that he does business with. And that was something that really stuck out to me. My next question for Pat was, how does the constant growth and change of technology affect your company? And he mentioned that the two big growth areas he sees are security and data analytics. That's the positions that Mars is hiring mostly. He also mentioned that there is a lot of outsourcing, so all day-to-day support systems have been outsourced to India, Brazil, and Russia. And most people in IT at Mars right now are specialists in infrastructure, database, security, data analytics, or they are functional business experts or project managers. He also mentioned that they have no associates in the US who do programming. It's all outsourced. My next question for Mr. Heffern was, how often do you need to make changes to your system? And he told me that on average they'll do changes about once a month, but there's always a backload of projects and change requests for enhancements and bug fixes that they are working on. But the most important thing to have a good working system is to have strong and correct data to work with. He said that if you were to estimate, about 75% of the support tickets were due to bad data in the system and not due to bugs in the program. I also asked Pat how the current pandemic affected the way business is conducted at Mars, and he covered a few different topics. The first was that they had to change their boots-on-the-ground approach to plant transitions. The second was that morale had dropped a bit due to not being able to be face-to-face with other colleagues. Pat told me he was already working remotely before the pandemic, so the transition wasn't necessarily more difficult for him, but he did notice a few changes with his colleagues and how it affected them. He also mentioned that before the pandemic, they would meet face-to-face once a month for planning, gathering, testing, and stuff like that, and that has all moved to Microsoft Team video conferences. My next question for Pat was, if cost wasn't an issue, what type of changes would you like to see in your company? And he told me that he would like to see a formal mentoring program instituted in the company. He said the current mentoring program has training and you do learn a little bit from others, but he told me that he learned so much informally from others, and that if there was a little bit more structure, the program would be a lot more efficient, especially for people who need that type of structure. My last question for Pat was, do you have any advice for current computer science students? And he actually had a ton of wisdom that I'd like to share. The first thing he told me was that you need to build relationships with the people you support and you trust, because it'll help you make connections, it'll help you grow your career. The second was that you need to fully understand the end-to-end process. This way you won't be making any assumptions or overlooking details. The third was that you need to understand the problem that needs to be fixed, because sometimes people come to you with solutions and it will be your job to implement those solutions, and in order to do that successfully, you need to understand the problem at its root. And the last thing he said was that you should seek to continually develop. Pat had this really great quote at the end of our interview where he said, "You're either growing or dying," and I think especially in IT, it's something that we all need to keep in mind. But overall, that concludes my interview with him. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.